The sun hung low over the Colorado Territory, a blazing disk in an endless sky that offered no mercy. Dust swirled like ghost dancers on the wind, scraping against the land like 1,000 whispered curses. Lydia Rayburn stood at the edge of the canyon, her boots buried ankle-deep in dry, cracked earth. Her skirts were stained with sweat and dirt, her wide-brimmed hat shadowing eyes that had seen too much loss to fear the wild anymore. She had come alone, not out of courage, not entirely, but because there was no one left to stop her. The wind tugged at the canvas of her wagon, parked crooked beside a dead mesquite. Two mules grazed wearily on whatever brittle stalks they could find. Lydia knelt near a dry wash, her fingers pressing into the soil. She sniffed the air, tilted her head, and listened. The land spoke if you knew how to listen. Soft murmurs beneath the wind, old secrets buried beneath the dust. "Still breathing," she murmured. From the tin trunk behind her wagon, she pulled a bundle wrapped in waxed cloth. Seeds, carefully preserved, sorted by hand. Some she had inherited from her mother, others bartered from traders, a few found in abandoned settler cabins. Corn, squash, beans, and 3 types of wildflower, for beauty if not survival. She carried them like they were holy. Her hands worked with gentle precision as she dug narrow trenches, bearing the seeds like promises. Her mother had taught her the planting chants, not the kind sung to spirits, but the kind that kept rhythm while you worked, that gave time to the motion, that gave hope to your breath. Plant deep where the shadows fall. Wait for rain that never calls. A single bead of sweat trickled down her temple. Lydia stood, brushing off her hands as a shadow crossed the canyon mouth. A man on horseback. He rode slowly, wary. His hat was pulled low, rifle slung across his back, boots coated in red dust. He was lean and rough, with a kind of presence that moved like a slow wind, unhurried but impossible to ignore. "That's private land," Lydia said, not looking away. "Ain't much that's private these days," the man replied, dismounting. He approached without arrogance. Just that worn kind of calm that comes from being alive too long in a place where that wasn't guaranteed. "Elias Danner," he offered. "Sheriff sent me. Folks in Ash Hollow been saying there's a woman playing farmer in Coyote Country. Thought I should check if you'd lost your mind. Tell your sheriff my mind's mine to lose." He didn't smile, not really, but something flickered. Lydia turned back to the wash, not waiting for his approval. "If you're here to stop me, don't bother. I've got seeds in the ground already. Might as well see if they grow." Elias stepped closer, his gaze tracking the uneven rows she just planted. "So that's what this is about? Farming? In this dead land?" "No," Lydia said quietly. "It's about not letting it die." The silence stretched between them, filled only by the wind, the mule's distant snort, and the whisper of roots that might, just might, be catching hold beneath their feet. He didn't offer help. She didn't ask. But when the sun dipped behind the ridge and Lydia lit her tiny fire beneath the stars, she found Elias still there, sitting by his horse, hat low, rifle across his lap, watching, waiting. And for the first time in years, Lydia didn't feel alone. The wind whispered through the broken fences of Rosewater Hollow, stirring the dust but offering no rain. Lydia stood at the edge of her makeshift garden, a fragile patch of soil she had turned with her bare hands, marked now by stakes and string. Each seed had been placed with care, a quiet prayer in every motion. Nothing had sprouted yet, but she believed. From the ridge came the distant sound of hooves, slow and steady. She turned to see Elias approaching, seated atop a chestnut mare, reins held loose. He always looked like he belonged to the land, weathered, steady, eyes like storm clouds. He dismounted without a word and walked the few steps toward her small fence. "You're planting where nothing grows," he said at last, voice even. Lydia didn't flinch. "Then it's time something did." He looked past her at the tilled earth, then to her hands, scratched, blistered, strong. "You don't give up easy." She wiped her brow with the back of her arm. "Not anymore." A long pause stretched between them, the silence of two people too long alone. Finally he asked, "What are you hoping to grow? Beans? Squash? Corn, maybe, she said. Then after a beat, hope. That word hung in the air like something sacred. Elias nodded once at Slow. If you're wrong, you'll be hungry. If I'm right, we won't be. He studied her then, not like a man staring at a stranger, but like a man recognizing something, someone he thought lost to the past. A kind of fierce dignity that didn't ask permission to bloom. You need water, he said. I know, she replied, but the soil remembers. My father used to say that. He believed that land, no matter how dry, never forgets how to live. Elias squatted down beside the plot, dragging his fingers through the dirt. It crumbled fine and gray. This land doesn't need words, it needs proof. Lydia turned toward the barn. There's a cistern buried behind that old shed. The settlers before me didn't even know it existed. It's cracked, but I patched it with tar and will. Tar and will, huh? Elias smiled barely. That's one hell of a mix. She shrugged. I've seen worse, used to build better. That evening, Elias stayed. He filled the trough by hand from the patchwork cistern while Lydia sewed the last rows. They didn't talk much, only when necessary. But there was a rhythm to it, like two people remembering an old song. When the sun dipped low, Lydia lit a lantern and handed him a cup of steeped herbs. Tastes like dirt, he said after the first sip. Good. That means it's real. He chuckled low and rough. I'd forgotten how real tastes. They sat on the edge of the porch watching the stars blink into life. The land was still dry. The air was still heavy. But for the first time, Lydia felt something shifting. Not in the sky, but in the space between them. You lost someone, she asked gently. Elias didn't answer for a while. A brother. 2 winters ago, fever took him. He was the last of us. I'm sorry, she said, meaning it. You? My daughter, she whispered. 3 summers old. We left her grave behind in Arkansas. The land there swallowed everything, including my marriage. He turned toward her, and the silence that followed was not empty. It was full of names neither had spoken aloud in months, maybe years. The night deepened, and the stars wheeled overhead, silent witnesses to 2 strangers who weren't strangers anymore. Before he mounted his horse, Elias turned. I'll come back tomorrow. Bring a few sacks of compost. My brother kept journals on soil remedies. Lydia raised an eyebrow. You're giving up your secrets already? He looked at her, serious. Not secrets, just hope. And with that, he rode off into the dark, leaving behind a woman who had planted seeds not just in the ground, but in something far more fragile and rare. The rain came not with fury, but with grace. Lydia woke to the soft patter of water on the barn roof, the kind of sound that stitched itself into dreams until you woke breathless with wonder. She threw open the shutters and stared, barely able to believe what she saw. The dust outside was gone, replaced by damp earth that glistened under a pewter sky. The parched land drank like a dying man given wine. She ran barefoot to the garden plot. There, between the rows, tiny green shoots had broken through the soil like whispered promises. Her throat tightened. She knelt in the mud, fingertips brushing the newborn leaves. You remembered, she whispered. You remembered how to grow. Behind her, hooves approached. Elias dismounted slowly, carrying 2 sacks on his shoulder. One was compost. The other held seeds. You felt it coming? She asked without turning. I prayed it would, he replied. Sometimes that's all you get out here, a prayer and a stubborn heart. She looked up at him, eyes wide with unshed joy. It's working. He set the sacks down beside her. No, he said gently. You're working. The rain just answered you. They worked together in silence, spreading compost around the chutes, building a crude fence to keep wandering animals out. At one point, Elias touched her wrist, briefly guiding her hand. It was nothing, but it was everything. By noon, the garden looked less like a gamble and more like a chance. Inside the cabin, Lydia brewed coffee, weak, bitter stuff, but it filled the space between them with warmth. This place, it wasn't always dead, Elias said quietly, cradling the cup between rough palms. Years ago, settlers planted apple trees on the ridge. I remember the blooms, white like snow, but sweet. She leaned against the wall. What happened to them? Same thing that happens to anything left too long without care. Lydia didn't speak for a while. Then quietly, would you help me try again? Not just the garden, the orchard, the well, this whole hollow. He met her gaze, searching for hesitation. He found none. I'll help, he said, but not because I pity you. I know. I'll help, he repeated, because when you walked barefoot into a dead field and said, it's time something lived, I saw someone who remembered how to believe. And that kind of woman, she's rare. A soft breath escaped her lips, a trembling thing. And what about you? Elias stared into his cup. I'm not trying to save this land. I think it might be saving me. Later that night, they stood on the porch again. But this time, they didn't sit apart. This time, her shoulder brushed his. Lydia, he said softly, you're more than what they tried to burn away. And she replied, voice barely above a whisper, so are you. And in the stillness that followed, something bloomed between them. Not sudden, not loud, but like roots under the surface, quietly stretching toward light. The orchard had once been a crown of life above the hollow, its trees lining the ridgeline like quiet sentinels. Now most were dead, their twisted limbs brittle and leafless. But not all. Lydia stood before one, half split by lightning years ago, its trunk blackened, gnarled, and yet, somehow still alive. A few pale blossoms clung stubbornly to a high branch, defying logic and memory. She touched the bark. You're still holding on. Behind her, Elias carried a shovel, his coat damp from mist. Old root systems run deep, he said. Even fire can't kill a heart that strong. They worked for hours, clearing rot, trimming limbs, and planting new saplings among the stumps. Lydia whispered to each as she lowered them into the earth, telling them what she hoped for, like secrets carried on breath. By midday, Elias paused, leaning on his shovel. Lydia, he said, voice cautious, there's something I haven't told you. She looked up, dirt smeared on her cheek. Go on. He hesitated. I wasn't just passing through. The people who exiled you, I used to ride with them. Her heart stumbled. You were one of them? I never lifted a hand against you, he said quickly. But I saw it. I saw what they did. And I said nothing. Silence settled between them. The wind picked up, rattling the last blossoms above. Lydia's eyes stayed on the soil. Why now? Why help me? Because I didn't back then, he said, and it's eaten at me every day since. I thought I could leave it behind, but then I saw you standing in that field, refusing to break. She looked at him for a long moment, not speaking. Then simply, we all carry fire, Elias. The question is what we do with it. He nodded slowly. I want to plant something good. She held out a young sapling. Then plant this one with me. Together they dug a hole in the charred shadow of the old tree. As they placed the sapling between them, their hands met in the dirt. You think it'll grow? He asked. Lydia glanced up at the burned trunk behind them. It already has. That night they didn't speak much. They didn't need to. He brought his cot closer to the hearth. She let him. Outside, the wind moved gently through the hollow, no longer howling, but humming. And somewhere deep in the orchard, a blossom opened in the dark. The air smelled different. Lydia noticed it before the sun rose. Sweet, almost like honey. The scent of fruit. Real fruit. She rushed to the edge of the orchard in bare feet, Elias close behind her. There, in the softest morning light, it hung. A single apple. Small, golden, imperfect, but real. She touched it with shaking fingers. Elias stood beside her, his voice barely more than breath. You did it. Lydia smiled through tears. We did. It was the first yield of months of labor. The orchard had begun to breathe again, slowly but steadily. Saplings were budding. Soil once dead was now damp and dark. Even the animals had returned. Deer tracks lined the creek bed, and birds called from the cottonwoods again. People from neighboring valleys came with cautious steps, drawn by word of the healer woman who made the hollow bloom again. They brought children, sick and sunken-eyed. Lydia welcomed them all, her hands steady and full of hope. And Elias, he stayed. Not out of guilt, but out of something deeper now. something growing between them like the orchard itself. That night they shared the apple, slicing it in half. As they bit into it, Lydia laughed, truly laughed for the first time since her exile. But joy is a flame, and flames cast shadows. 3 days later, the past rode into the hollow, a lone horse, a rider cloaked in dust and silence. Lydia watched from the barn as he approached, the old sheriff's badge still pinned to his coat like a scar no one asked about. Sheriff Abram Cole. He reined in slowly, removing his hat. Lydia, she stiffened. You've got gall showing up here. I came to say, the council back east? They know what happened. Some of them even believe you now. I can offer you a way back. Elias stepped forward. She doesn't need your forgiveness. Sheriff Cole studied him. I remember you. You were one of ours until you weren't. I remember you too. And I remember how you let them light that fire. Cole sighed. I didn't come for a fight, just to give her the chance she was owed. Lydia looked at the man who once signed her death sentence. This place, she said slowly, gesturing to the orchard, the cottage, the hollow now green again, gave me life. What I had before, that wasn't home. It was survival. This is mine now. I won't leave it. Cole nodded, his eyes tired. Then I'll ride on. As he turned his horse, Lydia said, Sheriff, he paused, tell them something for me. Tell them the woman they tried to burn grew roots. The sheriff dipped his head once and rode away, dust trailing behind him like the last ghost of a dying fire. That night, Elias poured them each a mug of cider from the season's first press. To the orchard, he said. Lydia touched her cup to his. To starting over. Their fingers brushed again, and neither pulled away. Spring had never come to Hollowvale this fast. The frost that once painted the soil in brittle white had melted into a soft breath of warmth, coaxing seeds into sprouting, flowers into blooming, and hearts, especially Lydia's, into unfolding. She stood barefoot on the dewy grass, watching bees hover lazily over the orchard's newest blossoms. The trees, once skeletal and brittle, now wore green like a promise. Behind her, the small cottage buzzed with quiet life. Someone tending the fire, someone humming a half-remembered tune. Elias. He no longer left after breakfast, no longer lingered at the edge of things. He belonged now, to the orchard, to the hollow, to her. Lydia crouched beside a cluster of wild herbs, inspecting their growth. Mint, chamomile, and pennyroyal all thrived in a way they hadn't in years, not just because of water or good soil, but because the land, like her, had been given the chance to heal. You're up early. Elias's voice was still sleep-soft as he stepped outside, his hair messy, a mug in each hand. He handed her one. She smiled as their fingers brushed. Couldn't sleep, she murmured. I wanted to check the eastern rose. I think the peaches will bloom early this year. They will. Everything's early now. Even love. She looked at him, startled. He blushed, just faintly, but he didn't look away. I never said it before, he continued, but I should have the moment you saved me. The moment you stayed instead of turning me out like the others did. Lydia stared into her cup, steam curling like a ghost between them. I didn't save you to be owed. I know. That's why it means more. He paused. But if you'll have me, I want to build a life with you. Here, with this place, with these people, with you. Lydia said nothing at first. Then with a half laugh, half sob, she whispered, Elias, I think I already started. And when he stepped closer, she leaned into him as if pulled by gravity. The kiss was gentle, tasting of applewood smoke and hope, and it felt less like a beginning and more like a homecoming. Later that week, Lydia hosted the first planting festival the Hollow had seen in decades. Families came from far towns, bringing seeds and stories. Laughter echoed through the orchard. Children chased fireflies. The trees swayed as if dancing with the wind. They called her the Lady of the Bloom now. A healer, yes, but also a keeper of peace, a builder of bridges, a woman who turned sorrow into soil. And the orchard? It grew more than fruit. It grew belonging. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the air turned sweet with the scent of honeysuckle, Lydia sat beside Elias beneath the tree where the first apple had grown. "Did you ever think," he asked, "that being cast out would bring us all here?" She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "I think," she said softly, "some exiles aren't punishment. They're invitations. To build something better. To become someone truer." And in the hush that followed, the hollow breathed. The trees whispered. The stars blinked awake overhead. And Lydia Brooks, the woman they had tried to destroy, rested in a valley that had chosen her instead. A healer, a leader, a survivor, and finally, home. And so, across these unforgiving lands, another tale drifts away with the wind. If this quiet courage, this stubborn heart touched you in any way, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and pass this story on to someone who needs it. Don't forget to subscribe, because out here there are still so many truths left to tell, each one carved from pain, hope, and dust. This is Wild West Stories. Thank you for watching.